The year was 2087, and humanity had grown used to living among the stars. Space exploration had become a part of daily life. Colonies on the moon were thriving, and Mars was slowly being turned into a second home for Earth's growing population. People talked about space like it was just another neighborhood. But one morning, everything changed. At first, no one noticed anything strange. The sky over Earth looked the same as always, blue during the day, dark at night. Then came the reports from the deep space telescopes near Jupiter. A massive fleet of alien ships had appeared out of nowhere. They were huge, bigger than anything humans had ever built. Their shapes were jagged and dark, almost like shadows floating in space. News spread quickly. Within hours, every screen on Earth showed the same image: a cluster of alien ships moving steadily toward the inner planets. Fear gripped the planet. In homes, schools, and offices, people stopped what they were doing to watch live updates. Some prayed, others argued, and many simply stared at the screens in disbelief. At NASA's Lunar Command Center, Commander Brian Carter stood in front of a large monitor showing the alien fleet. His face was calm, but his mind raced with questions. Who were they? Why were they here? What did they want? Beside him, Dr. Emily Dawson worked tirelessly to analyze the data streaming in from the telescopes. She was an astrophysicist who had spent years studying distant stars and galaxies, but this was something entirely new. "We've got less than 2 days before they reach Earth," Emily said, her voice tense. She pointed to the screen. "Their speed is incredible. If they keep this up, they'll pass Mars and enter Earth's orbit within 48 hours. Brian nodded. He knew what that meant. 2 days wasn't enough time to prepare for an invasion, or whatever this was. Earth's defenses were strong, but they weren't ready for something like this. He turned to his team. "Start running simulations. Assume the worst, and get me General Brooks on the line." Meanwhile, aboard the International Space Station, Captain Rachel Hayes watched the alien fleet through a small window. Her crew was already packing up important equipment. Orders had come down from Earth to evacuate the station if things got worse, but Rachel couldn't tear her eyes away from the sight outside. The fleet looked so quiet, so still. It was hard to believe they were heading straight for Earth. Back on Earth, panic began to take hold. In cities around the globe, people flooded the streets. Some tried to stock up on supplies, emptying store shelves in minutes. Others gathered in parks and squares, holding signs that read asterisk, "We come in peace," asterisk, or asterisk, "Fight back." Asterisk, news anchors spoke nonstop, trying to make sense of the situation. Governments held emergency meetings, but no one could agree on what to do. Should they try to talk to the aliens, or should they prepare for war? Amid the chaos, Sarah Miller sat in her apartment, staring at her laptop. She was a journalist, and she knew this story was bigger than anything she'd covered before. Determined to find answers, she started calling experts, activists, and even conspiracy theorists. One name kept coming up: a young engineer named Alex Green. According to rumors, Alex had been working on classified projects at NASA and might know more about the aliens than he let on. Sarah decided to track him down. She found him late that night in a dimly lit cafe. Alex looked nervous, glancing over his shoulder every few seconds. When Sarah introduced herself, he hesitated but eventually agreed to talk. "There's something you need to see," he whispered, pulling out a flash drive. On the drive was a series of encrypted files. As Sarah scrolled through them, her heart sank. The files contained plans for advanced weapon systems and detailed maps of Earth's most vulnerable locations. It seemed someone had been preparing for an alien attack long before the fleet arrived. But who? And why? As the hours ticked by, the world grew quieter. The alien fleet continued its relentless march toward Earth. No one knew what would happen next. All they could do was wait and hope. The world was in chaos. People everywhere were scared, unsure of what the alien fleet wanted or what they would do when they reached Earth. Governments tried to stay calm, But behind closed doors, leaders argued about the best way to handle the situation. Some thought humanity should try to talk to the aliens, hoping they came in peace. Others believed Earth needed to fight back before it was too late. General Samuel Brooks, a tough and experienced military leader, stood firmly on the side of war. He led Earth's United Defense Coalition, a group formed to protect the planet from threats like this one. In a tense meeting with world leaders, he slammed his fist on the table. "If we wait around for them to make the first move, we might not survive," he said. "We need to strike now, while we still can." But not everyone agreed. Dr. Emily Dawson, who had been working non-stop at NASA's Lunar Command Center, spoke up. "We don't even know why they're here," she argued. "What if attacking them makes things worse? We could be starting a war we can't win." Commander Brian Carter listened carefully to both sides. He knew time was running out, but rushing into a decision felt dangerous. Still, he couldn't ignore General Brooks' warnings. If the aliens were hostile, Earth needed to be ready. While the leaders debated, ordinary people were losing hope. In cities across the globe, protests erupted. Some demanded peace, holding signs that read "*Don't shoot first." Others called for action, chanting "Protect our planet." The streets were filled with noise and fear. Stores ran out of food and water as families prepared for the worst. Sarah Miller, the journalist, spent her days chasing leads. After her meeting with Alex Green, she became obsessed with uncovering the truth. The files he gave her hinted at a secret plan, but they didn't explain everything. Sarah knew she needed more information. She decided to visit a retired scientist named Dr. Laura Bennett, who had worked on early alien communication projects years ago. Dr. Bennett lived in a quiet town far from the chaos. When Sarah arrived, the elderly woman greeted her warmly but seemed cautious. "I've been expecting someone like you," Dr. Bennett said. "People always come looking when the world is about to end." Over tea, Sarah showed her the files from Alex. Dr. Bennett studied them carefully. Her brow furrowed. Finally, she sighed. "This isn't just about defense," she said. "Someone has been planning for an alien invasion for decades. These weapons, these maps, they're designed to destroy, not to negotiate." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "Who would do something like this?" she asked. Dr. Bennett shook her head. "That's the question, isn't it? But whoever it is, they're playing a dangerous game." Meanwhile, aboard the International Space Station, Captain Rachel Hayes kept watch over the alien fleet. Her crew had finished packing up most of the equipment, but Rachel refused to leave her post. Through the small window, she could see the ships growing closer. They looked so silent, so cold. It was hard to imagine what kind of beings could control such massive machines. Back on Earth, tensions continued to rise. General Brooks ordered troops to prepare for battle, while scientists scrambled to find a way to communicate with the aliens. Dr. Dawson suggested sending a signal using old technology from the Voyager missions, a golden record filled with sounds and images of Earth. It was a long shot, but it might be their only chance to make contact. As the hours passed, the world held its breath. No one knew what the aliens would do next, or if humanity's efforts would even matter. Fear hung heavy in the air, but somewhere deep inside, people clung to a tiny spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, there was still a way to avoid disaster. The decision was made. Humanity would try to talk to the aliens. It wasn't an easy choice, but it felt like the only option left. Dr. Emily Dawson and her team worked day and night to prepare a message. They used an old design from the Voyager missions, a golden record filled with sounds, pictures, and messages meant to represent Earth. The hope was simple. If the aliens understood what they were saying, maybe they would stop. Commander Brian Carter volunteered to deliver the message. He knew the mission was risky, but someone had to do it. Alongside him would be Lieutenant Megan Scott, a skilled pilot known for keeping her cool under pressure. Together, they boarded the Eclipse 1 *, a small experimental ship designed for deep space travel. As they launched from the Lunar Command Center, the world watched in silence. This might be humanity's last chance to avoid war. The journey to the alien fleet took hours, but it felt like days. Carter and Scott sat in the cockpit, staring at the growing shapes of the ships through the window. Up close, the fleet looked even more intimidating than it had from afar. The ships were massive, their dark surfaces covered in strange patterns that seemed to shift when you looked at them too long. There were no lights, no signs of movement, just an eerie stillness that made Carter's skin crawl. "This doesn't feel right," Scott muttered, breaking the silence. "They're not responding to anything. No signals, no warnings, nothing." Carter nodded. "Maybe they're waiting to see what we'll do next." When they were close enough, Carter sent the message. The Golden Records data streamed toward the largest ship in the fleet, the one everyone assumed was the leader. For a moment, there was no response. Then, suddenly, something happened. A single signal came back, faint but clear. It wasn't in any language anyone on Earth had ever heard before, but Dr. Dawson's team worked quickly to decode it. Back at the Lunar Command Center, the decoded message appeared on the screen. *, your fate is sealed. *. The words sent shockwaves through the room. Everyone froze, unsure of what to say or do. Was this a threat? A warning? Or something else entirely? On board the Eclipse 1 *, Carter and Scott stared at each other wide-eyed. "That doesn't sound good," Scott said quietly. "It doesn't," Carter agreed. But he wasn't ready to give up yet. "Let's get closer. Maybe we can figure out what's going on inside those ships." Scott guided the Eclipse 1 * closer to the fleet, careful not to make any sudden moves. As they approached, they noticed something strange. The ships weren't just silent. They were empty. At least, that's what it looked like. There were no visible weapons, no crew members, no signs of life at all. It was as if the ships were moving on their own. "What kind of technology is this?" Scott whispered, her voice filled with awe and fear. "I don't know," Carter admitted, "but it's beyond anything we've ever seen." While Carter and Scott gathered information, people back on Earth reacted to the decoded message in different ways. Some saw it as proof that the aliens were hostile, while others believed it might have been misunderstood. Sarah Miller, the journalist, worked tirelessly to uncover more details. She reached out to experts, trying to make sense of the cryptic phrase. At the same time, protests grew louder. In cities around the globe, crowds chanted slogans like *, we deserve answers, *, and *, don't give up, *, governments struggled to keep order. But fear was spreading faster than anyone could control. General Brooks pushed harder for military action. "If they think they can scare us into submission, they're wrong," he told his team. "We need to show them we're not afraid to fight." But Dr. Dawson argued against rushing into battle. "We don't even know who or what we're dealing with," she insisted. "Attacking now could make things worse." As the debate raged on, Carter and Scott continued their mission. They scanned the alien ships, looking for clues about their purpose. What they found was baffling. The ships didn't seem to have traditional engines or power sources. Instead, they appeared to be powered by some kind of energy field that defied explanation. "This isn't just advanced technology," Carter said, shaking his head. "It's like magic." Scott frowned. "Magic doesn't exist, Commander." "Then what do you call this?" Before she could answer, the Eclipse 1 * sensors picked up something new. Deep within the largest ship, there was a faint pulse, a signal unlike anything they detected before. Whatever it was, it seemed important. "We need to check it out," Carter decided. Scott hesitated. "Are you sure that's a good idea?" "No," Carter admitted. "But we didn't come all this way to turn back now." With that, they set a course for the heart of the alien fleet, unaware of the secrets and dangers that awaited them. The Eclipse 1 moved cautiously toward the largest alien ship, its engines humming softly as Lieutenant Megan Scott guided it through the eerie silence of space. Commander Brian Carter sat beside her, his eyes fixed on the monitors displaying strange readings from the ship ahead. The faint pulse they had detected earlier grew stronger as they approached, almost like a heartbeat. It was unsettling, but also fascinating. As they entered the massive ship, the interior seemed to defy all logic. The walls shimmered with a dim, pulsing light that changed color slowly, shifting between deep blues and fiery reds. There were no corridors or rooms, just an endless expanse of smooth, flowing surfaces that felt alive. The air inside was cold, and the sensors on the Eclipse 1 struggled to make sense of the environment. "What is this place?" Scott whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "I don't know," Carter replied, gripping the edge of his seat. "But we're not alone here." Suddenly, a low hum filled the cockpit. It wasn't coming from their ship. It was coming from the alien vessel itself. The sound grew louder, vibrating through the hull of the Eclipse 1 Then, without warning, shapes began to form around them. They looked like shadows at first, but soon they took on more defined forms. Tall, humanoid figures made entirely of light. Their presence was overwhelming, yet strangely calm. One of the figures stepped forward, its glowing outline flickering faintly. Carter and Scott froze, unsure of what to do. The figure raised a hand, and instantly, a wave of images flooded their minds. They saw flashes of Earth's past, ancient civilizations rising and falling, wars fought over land and power, pollution choking the skies, and oceans filled with plastic. Then came visions of destruction, cities crumbling, forests burning, and people crying out in despair. Carter blinked, trying to clear his head. What was that?" he asked, though he wasn't sure if the figure could understand him. "They're showing us something," Scott said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's like a warning." Back on Earth, Sarah Miller continued her investigation. After hearing about the strange message sent by the aliens, she traveled to Montana to meet Jake Thompson, a farmer who claimed to have seen something extraordinary. When she arrived at his remote farm, Jake greeted her nervously. He led her to a barn where a glowing orb hovered silently in the air. "This thing showed up last night," Jake explained. "When I touched it, I saw things I can't explain." Sarah hesitated but reached out to touch the orb. Instantly, her mind was flooded with visions similar to what Carter and Scott had experienced aboard the alien ship. She saw Earth consumed by fire and ash, its surface barren and lifeless. But then, the vision shifted. She saw humanity rebuilding, learning to live in harmony with nature. The message was clear. Earth stood at a crossroads. Meanwhile, Dr. Emily Dawson worked tirelessly to decode the signals being sent by the alien fleet. Using data collected by Carter and Scott, she discovered something shocking. The ships weren't controlled by traditional beings. They were part of a collective consciousness powered by quantum technology far beyond human understanding. Even more alarming, the fleet seemed to be receiving commands from somewhere else, possibly another entity altogether. General Samuel Brooks refused to wait any longer. "We need to act now," he insisted during an emergency meeting. "If these ships are just pawns, imagine what's controlling them. We can't let them get closer to Earth." Dr. Dawson argued against attacking. "We still don't know enough. If we strike blindly, we might trigger something we can't stop." While the debate raged on, Carter and Scott explored deeper into the alien ship. They followed the glowing figures, which seemed to guide them toward the source of the pulsing energy. Along the way, they encountered strange symbols etched into the walls. Some looked familiar, resembling ancient carvings found on Earth. Others were completely alien, twisting and shifting as if alive. Finally, they reached a large chamber at the center of the ship. In the middle of the room floated a massive sphere, crackling with energy. It pulsed rhythmically, matching the beat they had heard earlier. Carter realized this must be the heart of the ship, the source of its power. "We need to find out what this thing does," he said, stepping closer. Scott grabbed his arm. "Wait, what if touching it sets off some kind of alarm?" Before they could decide, the glowing figures surrounded them again. This time, the images in their minds were clearer. They saw a timeline, a countdown leading to Earth's destruction. But there was also a choice. Humanity could change its path, or it could face erasure. Carter turned to Scott, his expression grim. "I think we found our answer. Now we just have to convince Earth to listen." Commander Brian Carter and Lieutenant Megan Scott stared at the glowing sphere in the center of the alien ship. Its pulsing energy seemed to echo through the chamber, filling the air with a low hum. The visions they had seen were clear now. The aliens weren't just invaders. They were enforcers, sent to judge Earth for its actions. If humanity didn't change, the planet would be erased. "We need to get this information back to Earth," Carter said firmly. "If we can show them what we've seen, maybe they'll understand." Scott nodded but glanced around nervously. The glowing figures still surrounded them, watching silently. "Do you think they'll let us leave?" she asked. Before Carter could answer, one of the figures stepped forward. It raised a hand, and the sphere began to glow brighter. A beam of light shot out, striking the Eclipse 1 asterisk. The small ship shuddered as new data streamed into its systems, maps, signals, and fragments of the alien fleet's purpose. "They're giving us something," Scott realized, her voice filled with awe. "It's like a message." Carter didn't waste time. "Let's take it and go. We got what we came for." They hurried back to the Eclipse 1 asterisk, the glowing figures parting to let them pass. As they climbed aboard and prepared to leave, Carter couldn't shake the feeling that the aliens were watching, not as enemies, but as judges. He hoped humanity would listen before it was too late. Back on Earth, Sarah Miller and Jake Thompson worked tirelessly to decipher the orb's secrets. The glowing object had begun emitting strange patterns of light, almost like a code. Using equipment borrowed from a nearby university, Sarah managed to translate parts of it. What she found confirmed what Carter and Scott had discovered. The alien fleet was controlled by a higher power, one that saw Earth as a threat to the balance of the universe. "This isn't about war," Sarah explained to Jake as they pored over the data. "It's about survival. If we don't prove we can change, they'll wipe us out." Jake frowned. "But how do we prove something like that? People aren't going to stop fighting or polluting overnight." "I don't know," Sarah admitted, "but we have to try." Meanwhile, General Samuel Brooks grew impatient. Despite Dr. Emily Dawson's warnings, he ordered the military to prepare for an attack. "We can't sit around waiting for these things to make their move," he argued. "If we strike first, we might have a chance." Dr. Dawson tried to reason with him. "General, if Commander Carter is right, and the fleet is being controlled remotely, we're dealing with technology far beyond anything we've ever seen. Attacking blindly could make things worse." Brooks hesitated but refused to back down completely. "Fine, we'll wait for Carter's report, but if he doesn't bring back proof, we're moving forward with the plan." When the Eclipse 1 asterisk finally returned to the Lunar Command Center, Carter and Scott wasted no time sharing what they had learned. They presented the data collected from the alien ship, along with the visions they had experienced. Dr. Dawson analyzed everything, piecing together a clearer picture of the alien fleet's mission. "It's not just about Earth," she explained during a meeting with world leaders. "The fleet is part of a larger system, a kind of cosmic cleanup crew. They target planets that pose a risk to the galaxy, whether through environmental destruction or unchecked aggression." The room fell silent. Humanity had always thought of itself as the center of the universe, but now it faced the harsh truth. Earth wasn't special. It was just another planet in the vastness of space, judged by forces it barely understood. Sarah and Jake joined the discussion, presenting the orb's findings. Together, they argued for a global effort to show the aliens that humanity could change. "We need to send a message, not just words, but actions," Sarah insisted. "If we can demonstrate that we're willing to work together, maybe they'll give us a second chance." World leaders debated long into the night, torn between fear and hope. Some wanted to fight, while others believed cooperation was the only way forward. Finally, a decision was made. Earth would attempt one last communication with the alien fleet, using the data from the orb, and the Eclipse 1**'s mission to craft a new message. As scientists worked on the signal, people around the world began to come together. Protests turned into rallies for peace, and social media buzzed with calls for unity. For the first time in years, humanity felt connected, not as nations, but as a single species facing an uncertain future. Carter watched the efforts unfold from the Lunar Command Center. He didn't know if it would be enough, but he held on to hope. "Maybe this is our chance," he said quietly to Scott, "to show them we're worth saving." Scott nodded, though doubt lingered in her eyes. "I just hope it's not too late." The plan was risky, but it was all humanity had left. Using the data collected by Commander Brian Carter and Lieutenant Megan Scott, along with the information from the glowing orb, scientists worked around the clock to create a new message for the alien fleet. This time, the message wasn't just about peace. It was about change. It showed Earth's willingness to work together, to heal its planet, and to stop harming itself and others. Dr. Emily Dawson led the team responsible for crafting the signal. She combined images of global cooperation, people planting trees, cleaning oceans, and helping one another, with promises of reform. The message ended with a simple plea. Give us a chance to prove we can do better. Once the signal was ready, it was loaded onto a small drone designed to approach the alien fleet without causing alarm. General Samuel Brooks reluctantly agreed to hold off on any military action until the message was delivered. "If this doesn't work," he warned during a meeting, "we're going in with everything we've got." Sarah Miller and Jake Thompson joined the effort, sharing updates with the world through live broadcasts. People everywhere held their breath as the drone launched from the Lunar Command Center. It carried not only the message but also the hopes of billions. Lieutenant Scott volunteered to pilot the mission. Despite the danger, she insisted on being the one to deliver the signal. "I've been out there before," she said. "I know what we're dealing with." Jake accompanied her, his connection to the orb making him an important part of the mission. No one understood why, but the orb seemed to resonate with the alien technology. Scientists hoped it might help bridge the gap between humans and the fleet. As Scott guided the drone toward the alien ships, Jake sat in the passenger seat, clutching the orb tightly. Its glow pulsed softly, almost like it was alive. The closer they got to the fleet, the more intense the orb's energy became. "It knows something we don't," Jake murmured, staring at it. When they reached the largest ship, Scott navigated carefully, avoiding any sudden movements. The alien vessels remained eerily silent, their dark forms looming like shadows against the stars. Finally, they arrived at the same chamber where Carter and Scott had encountered the glowing sphere. "This is it," Scott said, her voice steady despite the tension. "Let's send the message." Jake stepped out of the drone, holding the orb close. As he approached the glowing sphere at the center of the room, the orb began to hum. The two objects reacted to each other, their lights merging into a brilliant burst of energy. For a moment, Jake felt overwhelmed, as if the orb was showing him something, a vision of Earth's future. He saw humanity working together, healing the planet, and reaching out to the stars. But he also saw darkness, the possibility of failure. Scott watched nervously from the drone. "Jake, are you okay?" "I think so," he replied, stepping back. I think it worked." The glowing sphere pulsed once, then dimmed. At the same time, the alien figures appeared again, surrounding Jake and Scott. They didn't move or speak, but their presence felt less threatening now, almost calm. Then, without warning, the entire ship began to vibrate. "What's happening?" Scott asked, rushing back to the controls. "I don't know," Jake admitted, climbing into the drone. "But we should go. Now." Scott didn't need to be told twice. She fired up the engines and flew out of the chamber as fast as she could. Behind them, the alien fleet started to shift. The ships began dissolving, one by one, into streams of light that faded into nothingness. Within minutes, the fleet was gone. Back at the Lunar Command Center, everyone watched in stunned silence as the drone's cameras captured the event. The alien ships had vanished, leaving no trace behind. Humanity was safe, for now. Dr. Dawson let out a shaky breath. I think they accepted our message." Carter nodded, his face pale but relieved. "For now, we've bought ourselves some time, but this isn't over." Jake stared at the orb, which had grown quiet again. "They'll be watching," he said softly. "We have to keep proving we're worth saving." As the world celebrated, Sarah reflected on what had happened. Humanity had faced its greatest test, and passed, barely. But she knew the real challenge lay ahead. If people couldn't follow through on their promises, the aliens, or something worse, might return. For now, though, Earth had survived. And that was enough. The alien fleet was gone, but the world wasn't the same. People everywhere tried to make sense of what had happened. Some celebrated, believing humanity had been given a second chance. Others were scared, wondering if the aliens would return. The glowing orb that had played such an important role in the mission remained with Jake Thompson, its light dimmer now, but still alive. It felt like a reminder of what no one could say for sure. Sarah Miller spent her days writing about the event, trying to piece together the story for the world. She interviewed scientists, soldiers, and even Jake, who had become something of a reluctant hero. "I don't know why the orb chose me," Jake told her during one conversation. "But I think it's still watching us, waiting to see if we'll keep our promises." Dr. Emily Dawson continued her work at NASA, studying the data collected from the alien ships. She couldn't shake the feeling that the fleet's disappearance wasn't the end. "They erased themselves, but not their purpose," she said to Commander Brian Carter one evening. "If we slip back into old habits, they or someone else will come again." Carter nodded, staring out at the stars through a window at the Lunar Command Center. He had seen things he couldn't explain, things that made him question everything he thought he knew about the universe. "Do you think we've really changed?" he asked quietly. "I want to believe we have," Dr. Dawson replied. "But change takes time, and time is something we might not have much of." On Earth, life slowly returned to normal, or at least as normal as it could be after such an event. Governments worked together to address environmental issues, launching programs to clean oceans, reduce pollution, and protect wildlife. People around the world joined hands, planting trees and organizing community projects. For the first time in decades, there was a sense of unity, a shared goal to prove that humanity could do better. But not everyone believed in the changes. Some argued that the efforts were too little, too late. Conspiracy theories spread online, claiming the aliens were still hiding somewhere, waiting to strike. Others insisted the whole event had been staged, a trick by governments to control the population. Sarah wrote about these doubts too, knowing that fear and skepticism were part of human nature. General Samuel Brooks remained cautious, keeping Earth's defenses on high alert. "We can't afford to let our guard down," he told his team. "If the aliens were just pawns, who's pulling the strings? And what happens when they decide we're not worth saving?" Meanwhile, Jake found himself drawn to the orb more and more. It seemed to respond to his emotions, glowing brighter when he felt hopeful and dimming when he doubted. One night, under the light of a full moon, he took it outside to his farm. Sitting on the porch, he held it in his hands and whispered, "What do you want from us?" The orb didn't answer, not in words anyway. But Jake felt something, a warmth spreading through him. It wasn't fear or anger. It was hope. Maybe the aliens hadn't judged Earth yet. Maybe they were giving humanity a chance to grow. Sarah visited Jake often, documenting his connection to the orb. She began to wonder if it held secrets beyond what anyone understood. What if it's not just a tool? She asked him once. What if it's alive? Jake shrugged. I don't know, but I think it's here for a reason. As weeks turned into months, the world moved forward. The memory of the alien fleet lingered, a reminder of how fragile life truly was. Children drew pictures of the dark ships in the sky, while adults debated whether Earth was ready for another encounter. No one had all the answers, but everyone agreed on one thing. Humanity couldn't go back to the way things were before. Commander Carter stood on the surface of the moon one evening, watching Earth spin silently in the distance. It looked so small, so vulnerable. Yet it was also beautiful, a blue-green jewel floating in the vastness of space. He thought about the aliens, their glowing figures, and their strange judgment. Had they seen something in humanity worth saving? Or were they simply waiting to see what would happen next? Back home, Lieutenant Megan Scott reunited with her family, grateful for the time she'd been given. She didn't talk much about her mission, but sometimes, late at night, she dreamed of the alien ship, the shimmering walls, the pulsing sphere, and the eerie silence. She woke up each time with a single thought. Asterisk, we're not alone, asterisk. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The universe was bigger than anyone had imagined, filled with mysteries humanity might never fully understand. But for now, Earth was safe. And that was a start.